The first time I ever saw anything to do with cricket was on an old movie tone or Pathé Gazette or something. And I saw somebody taking a catch in a match at Lord's. And then, of course, no recollection of first real recollection I had was listening to the old radio sets in those days, wireless as it was called, when Leonard Hutton made his 364, and I remember things like that. No, we made our own entertainment, you see, as kids, because there was no such thing as television in those days. I mean, that was just a load of junk in a workshop being put together at that time. We just played cricket. We played cricket at school. In the 30s, when I was a kid, I had 3 cricket pitches to play on at my school. And, nowadays, kids haven't got pitches to play on. And then people wonder why we are not producing top-class cricketers. Of course, we could play in the street, you see, as well, because there was no such thing as motor cars parked down both sides. And, I mean, you've got a dustbin lid on a pair of bricks. Or, when the fairgrounds came, when the fairground for, say, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, you would always go down and put your pennies together and throw 3 balls at the coconuts, and there'd always be a gap at the back, so you'd wait while the newish sort of balls came out, and you'd throw one through the gap, and the gang would be behind the tent and nick the ball and take off, and we had enough cricket balls to play for the rest of the season, you see.
Now, you mentioned Len Hutton. Did you have any particular heroes of your own as a schoolboy, somebody you wanted to perhaps emulate later on?
Well, no, because I never saw anybody, you see. The first time I ever saw a county ground was when I walked on one. I lived out in the country. I was born in a little place called Scotch Springs, Stainton, right down the bottom end of nowhere in South Yorkshire, only just inside the Yorkshire borders. I could have been born either in Notts or Lincolnshire. I was so close to the borders, but I was born in Yorkshire and played for the great county. But no, I'm in Sheffield, Bramall Lane, which the nearest Yorkshire county ground to me in those days was like a million miles away to a kid. Nearest county ground to me would have been Worksop in Nottinghamshire, which was about 7 miles down the road, so in Harold Larwood territory.
And where did you play your first game for Yorkshire then? Was it at Headingley?
No, it wasn't. No, it was against Cambridge University at Cambridge in 1949 when I went down there. When I first went to Headingley in 1947, I think it was, to me, the only time I'd ever seen a field as big as that was full of turnips or mangoes or something.
Now, Yorkshire, the county, as a cricket county, has produced some of the best English cricketers of all time.
Wilfred Rhodes is the greatest all-rounder of all time, including the great Gary Sobers, who I happen to have a great friendship with. But Wilfred Rhodes, his record is unbelievable when you think that he took 4,187 first-class wickets, chipped in with 40,000 runs, and I don't know how many catches. I mean, that is a proper all-rounder, like George Herbert Hurst. I think he did something like 40-odd thousand runs and 2,700 first-class wickets. I mean, these people were giants. Frank Woolley, he scored, I think, somewhere around 50,000 runs and took over 2,000 first-class wickets. And when people start saying about some of these modern players being the greatest of all time, it's rather wrong, because they haven't sat down and read the history books like I have.
Over the years, you've been very lucky in a way that you made the move right away into BBC commentary, and the great camaraderie that surrounds the game of cricket continues with the BBC commentary team as well, doesn't it? You've met some and worked with some of the greatest cricketers and commentators of all time, including our great friend here, John Agnew, of course. But Brian Johnston, I suppose, is one of the greatest.
John has had a style of his own. God bless him. He was the most lovely, lovely, lovely man. I thought the world of him. And I used to love broadcasting with him. When people used to write in and say they'd like to hear more of us together, which I would like to have done, but of course politics in different parts and things like that. And you've got to try it. You've got to try out new voices. I mean, you can't expect people like Trevor and myself to go on forever. And of course, people like John Arlott and John Hurst and Don Mosey, they all said to me, you have your own style of broadcasting, and you must never, whatever you do, you must never alter it, because I'm the sort of person that I like to think that when I was bowling, I was searching for perfection, and I sometimes can't swallow it at all when I see people bowling badly, and I see people fielding sloppily, and I see people playing bad shots and getting out.
You mentioned already that your research for the cricket commentary is extensive, the number of books that you've read over the years, your own experience and so on. Obviously, a wealth of knowledge to bring the collection of anecdotes and memories and stories, which I mentioned. It's called How's That? What sort of stories and anecdotes are we talking about?
Well, first of all, we talk about one of the greatest characters in the game of cricket from Leicestershire, Alex Skelding, the umpire, who was the most marvellous, wonderful man. And Alec, he wrote poetry and songs about the game and things like that. Nobody had the sense to put them on tape, so we could all enjoy them. And I remember when I made 100, and he was umpiring, and he shook hands and he said, "Well done," he said. "Well done." And he said, "I made 100 once, you know." And I said, "Did you?" He said, "Oh, yeah." So I said, "Well, I never knew that, Alec." He said, "No, it's not in the record book." So I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, I had my first innings in April," he said, "and my last in September, and I finished with 100 odd for the season." He said, he was a wonderful man. And on the top of that, you see, you could say to him in those days, "Look, I don't feel right. There's something wrong. Will you have a look at me?" And he would have a look at you, and he'd talk to you at lunchtime. And they'd say to him, "What did you notice? Oh, you're doing this, you're doing that, you're trying to run up, you're running up too fast, or you're not getting to the wicket. Have you checked your run up?" And you could sit and talk to people like that, and of course you can't do that these days.
Thanks again for checking out this interview with Fred Trueman. There are many more on the channel. If you enjoyed it, click on the like button. Make sure you ring that notification bell to be informed of any future interviews. And if you possibly can to help the channel going forward, please subscribe.